Good morning, everyone.
Hi, John.
Good morning.
Good morning, Netha. Colleagues, we were just awaiting for others to join. Sincerely apology for that. We will kickstart our webinar. With those words, I would like to welcome you. It is a great pleasure and privilege for me to be welcoming you at the 10th launch webinar as we mark a significant milestone of 10 years of collective advocacy partnership and progress in advancing equitable access to health technologies across Africa. The Strengthening Africa's Health Technology Coalition, previously known as the South African Health Technology Advocacy Coalition, was established in 2016 by a group of committed non-governmental organizations with a shared vision to advocate, to promote, develop, and improve access to essential health technology, particularly in the areas of TB, HIV, and maternal health. Since its early days, SAHTAC has positioned itself as a platform for collaboration, dialogue, and action, bringing together a diverse voices to influence policy and strengthening systems that support innovation and access. Initially hosted by Path, and it kind of went through some significant transitions, especially in 2020 as part of the deliberate effort to strengthen local leadership and sustainability. And in November of the same year, which is 2020, the Oram Institute assumed the role of its host, making a new chapter focused on building African capacity and deepening regional ownership. Today's SAHTAC is proudly hosted by the Oram Institute, as indicated, and it is affiliated with Africa Health Research and Innovation and ARIDA, continuing to play a catalyst role in convening civil society, scientists, policymakers, and partners to shape policy, amplifying African voices and influence to the continent's health research, development, and innovation ecosystem. As we celebrate this 10-year milestone, we celebrate not only the growth of an organization, but the impact of a movement. Over the past decade, SAHTAC has contributed to strengthening advocacy for health technologies, supporting dialogue across sectors, and ensuring that innovation responds to the real needs of communities. This anniversary year represents both a reflection on what has been achieved and a renewed commitment to what still lies ahead. The purpose of today's launch webinar is really to officially open a year-long anniversary campaign. This moment allows us to pause and reflect on a decade of progress, whilst also looking forward with the intention and collective purpose. During this session, we will unveil the SAHTAC 10th year anniversary brand, introduce the strategic roadmap for the next phase of growth, and renew our shared commitment to advancing equitable access to health technologies across Africa. And really, we are guided by the following four objectives. Firstly, we would like to celebrate the 10th year anniversary achievement, and we want to launch the 10th anniversary brand and campaign pillars. And thirdly, we would like to reaffirm SAHTAC's role within the national, regional, as well as continental health research development and innovation agenda. And finally, we would like to work with our partners by mobilizing them. We would like to mobilize the members of the community and support around the shared future vision. We are honored to be joined today by SAHTAC members and partners. We also have policymakers. We also want to acknowledge researchers and scientists, including civil society organizations present here, and also development partners as well as funders present in our webinar today. Your presence really reflects the strength of coalition and the importance of collective action in shaping the future of health technologies on the continent. And as we launch this anniversary year, we do so with pride in the journey traveled, gratitude for the partnership built, and determination to deepen our impact in the decade ahead. SAHTAC at 10 is not only a celebration, it's a call to renew our energy, strengthen our alliances, and continue advocating for innovation that is accessible, inclusive, and responsive to the needs of our communities. Thank you for being part of this important event. And with those words, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you. But also in doing so, please do allow me to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Mr. Daniel Molokele, who is the human rights lawyer with a special focus on public health advocacy and policy matters. And with Mr. Molokele, what I can also say is that he is one of the co-founding members of SAHTAC. He was there when this movement was established in 2016, and it's a great pleasure for us to be having him today as our keynote speaker. He's a graduate with an LLB honors degree from the University of Zimbabwe. He has also obtained his LMM degree specializing in fundamental rights litigation from the University of South Africa. And then in 2020, he graduated with a Master's of Business Administration degree with the African Leadership University in Kigali in Rwanda. In January of 2024, he commenced his PhD in leadership studies with the International Leadership University based in Nairobi. And over the years, Mr. Molokele has worked for several NGOs, both in Zimbabwe as well as in South Africa. Included amongst these NGOs really is your National Constitutional Assembly, the Transparency International of Zimbabwe, the Peace and Democracy Project, the Zimon Line Trust Southern Editor Forum, the Global Zimbabwe Forum, the World AIDS Campaign under Waki Health, and he has also worked with Medicine Sans Frontières and South African Regional Program on Access to Medicine and Diagnosis. And finally, he has also worked with AIDS Accountability International. We have also learned that in 2018, he was elected as the Member of Parliament of Zimbabwe for the Wenge Central Constituency. And in August of 2023, he was re-elected for his second term. Between 2023 and 2024, he served as the Portfolio Committee on Health and Child Care chairperson. He is also an ordinary member of the Portfolio Committee on Human Affairs and Small Medium Enterprise, and that of Tourism and Hospitality. And with those words and the long bio of Mr. Molokele, please, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to hand over to Mr. Daniel to take us through his talk. To you, Honorable Mr. Molokele, it's an honor and privilege for us to be having you today. And thank you very much for honoring our invitation. I will now hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Greetings to you and greetings to everyone who has joined the call. Thank you so much for the generous introduction. As you have already confirmed, my name is Daniel Molokele. I am a Zimbabwean human rights lawyer who specializes in public health. and I've been an advocate for public health for most of my life as an adult, starting from my days at World AIDS Campaign in Cape Town in 2009. So I'm also one of the people who was privileged to be part of the pioneers of SAHTAC, and I was one of the civil society leaders that was involved in founding the organization. At that time, I was in the process of transitioning. I was working as the civil society partnerships manager for the Southern African Regional Program on Access to Medicines. And I also transitioned to be the executive director of the then AIDS Accountability International. So I worked with the organizations that were involved in setting up SAHTAC. I just want to say congratulations. 10 years is not a joke. It is a big achievement on its own. There are many initiatives, there are many movements that have struggled to go even beyond 5 years. So to reach 10 years is actually an achievement. So let me start by joining everyone else in saying congratulations, well done, everyone who's been part of this process. It has not been a journey where only one person was relied upon. It's been a journey where all of us played our role, all of us played our part. Some of us, like me, were part of the founding group, we were part of the pioneers. But as time went on, we were forced by circumstances beyond our control to sort of move a bit further away from the actual action. But we know that as we moved further and drifted further, there were others who stepped up, and there were others who've been there from the start up to now. So we applaud all of you and we congratulate you. And we encourage you to continue in this trajectory you're in. I've been asked to give a keynote address, and I've got 1 or 2 or 3 points that I want to highlight. The first one is around civil society as a key partner for development. So the role of civil society in promoting development and also the human rights agenda. Then the second one is around the importance of civil society in promoting development, especially from a funding model, from a financing model. And then last but not least, I want to speak about the opportunity for partnership between civil society and other development stakeholders with a particular lens from the parliamentary point of view, from the legislative point of view. Because in the last 6, 7, 8, 9 years of my life, I have transitioned from being a civil society leader into a legislator, into a parliamentarian. So let me start by highlighting the importance of civil society in promoting development. We know that the institution of the state is primarily responsible for the citizens achieving all the idealism, especially as represented by the Constitution. The Constitution sets out some rights that are supposed to be enjoyed by citizens, and included among those rights is the right to health, which our organization primarily focuses on. And at the end of the day, for the citizens to enjoy that right to health, it is the responsibility of the state to ensure that an optimal environment is set up to promote the execution or the implementation of the right to health to be enjoyed by the citizens. In that particular context, it is very important to know that official responsibility lies with the executive arm of the state, because the state is subdivided into 3 specific areas. There is the legislative arm, which is the parliament. There is the judicial arm, which is the court system. And there is the executive arm, which is the office of the president and cabinet, what we call the government of the day. So to the extent that the Constitution allows all these 3 particular arms of state to play the responsibility in promoting development, in promoting rights, including the right to health, and ensure that the well-being of citizens in a particular state are well catered for. So in this particular context, we know that in Africa, and indeed in countries like Zimbabwe and South Africa, it is the government of the day, what they call the governing party or the ruling party, which leads in the executive arm of the state. We do have countries like South Africa, where we have governments of national unity, where different political parties have come together to form a government of the country. And to the extent that that team is set up, it has the primary responsibility to promote human development, to promote even the right to health. And to that extent, every legislative and policy framework of the country in terms of practical implementation lies with the government of the day, with the executive arm of the state, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Health, the Minister of ICT, all other ministers that are involved, including the head of state and government, the president of the country. They are the ones who are supposed to come up with laws that promote human development. They are the ones who are supposed to come up with laws that promote the enjoyment of the rights as included in the Bill of Rights of the National Constitution, including the right to health for all citizens, access to issues such as healthcare services at primary level and all other levels, access to medicine, and access to new technologies that improve the healthcare of the people. So to that extent, it is the responsibility of the government of the day to come up with laws, to come up with policies that are then unpacked for the benefit of the citizens. The state can also support this aspiration through the parliament, which is the legislative arm of the state. It is their responsibility to pass new laws and to encourage the passing of new policies that respond to the needs of the population, that respond to the need of the citizens, especially when it comes to the promotion of human development, it comes to the promotion of enjoyment of rights such as the right to health. And then we also have the courts, the judiciary. We know even from South African history, when it comes to access to treatment, the Treatment Action Campaign struggled to convince the government of the day under President Thabo Mbeki, under the African National Congress, around the importance of the ARVs, the antiretroviral therapy, as part of the pillars of intervention in the fight against HIV and AIDS. And to the extent that they struggled to find alignment with the government of the day, they did manage to find alignment and support from the Constitutional Court of South Africa. That then underscores the importance of the other third pillar of the state, which is the judiciary. The South African courts ruled in favor of the Treatment Action Campaign. And in that process, they initiated one of the largest antiretroviral programs the world has ever seen. And to that extent, it promoted a big fight back against HIV and AIDS in South Africa. At that time, South Africa was facing a lot of deaths because of the HIV and AIDS epidemic. And the intervention of the South African courts helped to change the policy framework of the country, the prioritization of allocation of resource, and it unpacked the largest ARV program in the entire world. So to that extent, we see the very importance of the state in promoting human development. We see the importance of the state in promoting the enjoyment of rights, especially enshrined in the Constitutional Bill of Rights. In particular, in our context, we talk about the right to health. And then beyond that, I wanted to talk about the role of civil society. In some instances, social scientists talk about non-governmental organizations. And in that particular context, we place SAHTAC because SAHTAC is a network of civil society partners, is a network of non-governmental organizations that took it upon themselves to say we need to play our part in promoting the right to health in South Africa through innovation, through technology, so that we improve healthcare system in the country. We improve the livelihood of the people. So the importance of SAHTAC is placed in the context of civil society, is placed in the context of non-governmental organizations as another institution that citizens of a state can look up to, not necessarily enshrined with a mandate by the constitution of the country, but certainly expected by the people of the country to play a very important and decisive role. And to that extent, I've already given an example of the Treatment Action Campaign, that they collaborated and created a mass movement to promote the fight against HIV and AIDS in South Africa, to the extent that a very critical intervention around antiretroviral care was unpegged for the benefit of millions of South Africa. Today, South Africa is the largest antiretroviral program in the whole world. And thanks to the intervention of civil society partners as represented by the Treatment Action Campaign movement. And to that extent, we also locate SAHTAC to say that the responsible civil society partners who started this movement, they realized the importance of promoting research and development to promote the right to health in the country. They realized the importance of promoting new technologies to promote the right to health in the country, to make sure that South Africa and the rest of Africa start to recognize the importance of innovations to improve access to healthcare, quality and affordable access to healthcare. So SAHTAC comes in as part of the contribution of civil society. SAHTAC comes in as part of the contribution of non-governmental organizations, playing their part to ensure that the Human Development Index, not just for South Africa, but for the rest of Africa, starts to improve in a very positive trajectory, especially from a public health care point of view. So to the extent that SAHTAC was set up, we need, as all of us who are participating in this meeting today, applaud the contribution of SAHTAC to say that as civil society partners, as different organizations, we took the responsibility to say we will not just wait for the government of the day. We will not wait for the parliament. We will not wait for the judicial system, but we will step up and we will play our part and ensure that we also play a very decisive role, a very important contribution in terms of necessary intervention to promote healthcare services for our people, to promote the right to health in South Africa, and to ensure that new technologies, new inventions, innovative ideas are improved or are incorporated in our healthcare response. And to the extent that SAHTAC was set up, as we commemorate 10 years today, we need to appreciate the importance of the role of civil society. We need to appreciate the role of non-governmental organizations in development agenda. So as we celebrate the 10th anniversary of SAHTAC, we want to encourage civil society, not just in South Africa, but civil society all over Africa, civil society everywhere else, to say, do not step down on this responsibility. Continue to play your part. It may not be easy. Sometimes there is hostility from other parts of the state, especially the government of the day. There is hostility from the ruling party, from political leadership of the day. But at the end of the day, we must not step down. We must always seek to step up in the fight to promote human development, in the fight to promote the right to health, and to the extent that civil society, non-governmental organizations play their part, it is important that we continue to appreciate their role. So that is the first point that I wanted to highlight. And also to speak in the context of the changing funding model. In 2016, we're already struggling with the funding model for civil society, for non-governmental organizations, because we have a conflict of interest. We do not want non-governmental organization or civil society to be an extension of the state, to be an extension of the government of the day. But at the same time, we do not want them to be controlled by any other institution, whether the private sector, the corporate companies, whether individuals, whether political parties. So to the extent that we want the civil society partners, we want the non-governmental partners to be there in the promotion of development. We also want them to be independent. But at the end of the day, the biggest challenge about their independence is the funding model. We all know the principle that says, he who pays the piper calls the tune. That means that if you are the one who is funding, it means you might have a role in influencing the trends, in influencing the priorities of those you are paying money for. So at the end of the day, the funding model for civil society, for non-governmental organizations, is then affected because in most instances, those who are willing to fund programs, to fund activities, to fund missions, to fund visions of civil society, to fund visions of non-governmental organizations, those who are always willing, most of them have got a strings attached approach. They have an agenda that they want to promote. So civil society might receive funding, NGOs might receive funding, but within that funding model, there is a hook that seeks to force them in one or the other, to influence them, to manipulate them, to promote the agenda of the funder. And to that extent, it then becomes a conflict of interest between the NGO or the civil society and the funder, because the funder also wants their agenda to be promoted by the same civil society. So we find that conflict of interest, and it becomes a perpetual difficult situation for the civil society to engage. That's the reason why we know that the state can receive funding from the taxpayers, and taxpayers would expect part of that money to be used to fund the civil society as they complement the role of government of the day. But as governments in Africa have already taught us across history, the more a civil society organization or a non-governmental organization gets funding from the state, the harder for them to be independent, the harder for them to assert themselves. They eventually get swallowed up. They become part of the political machinery. They become part of the political propaganda. They lose sight of the moral compass of standing for the people and promoting the people's development. They end up being part of the political strategy of the day. And that is the challenge that we have as civil society, as non-governmental organizations. As we speak today, we now know that, especially in South Africa, especially in Africa, most of the civil society organizations, most of the NGOs are funded by individual donors who are rich. They are also funded by countries that are rich. And we now know that one of the major funders for civil society, one of the major donors for NGOs is the United States of America. And to the extent that the presidents of the day, as led by President Donald Trump, has come up with a major policy shift to cut on funding for overseas development, to cut on funding for international aid, to the extent that they have shut down one of the biggest international development organizations the world has ever seen, the USAID. It has been shut down together with a health-related strategy from the United States, the Presidential Emergency Fund, the PEFA, which was initiated under President George W. Bush to promote the American strategy around the response against HIV and AIDS in Africa. And a lot of African countries have over the years benefited from PEFA. So to that extent, we have seen a massive cut in terms of funding as led by the United States of America under President Trump, and all other Western countries have started to follow the example of America. And to that extent, it has directly affected the capacity of civil society organizations, the ability of non-governmental organizations. It is here in Africa where most of them were funded by these international partners from Europe and America, that we have seen a drastic cut in terms of number of active NGOs, number of civil society organizations. We have seen them close down, we have seen them shrink in space, and that is a threat that is going to affect us as we go forward. So we meet at a time when the funding model has completely changed, and a lot of civil society partners and a lot of NGOs are facing organizational extinction. And as we gather today, it's an opportunity to reflect on what would be ideally the best way to rationalize the legal resources that are there, to ensure that institutions and partnerships and networks such as SAHTAC continue to exist beyond 2026 and continue to play their very important role in the promotion of human development, in the promotion of the right to health for most of the citizens. We live in a world where the poor are forgotten. We live in a world where only the rich are recognized and the elitists are the ones that are appreciated. And if you are a nobody, nothing is done in recognition of your needs. And that's why it's important to have institutions such as SAHTAC. It's important to have civil society organizations and partners, non-governmental organizations coming in and protecting the poor, protecting the masses, protecting the majority. So as we meet this morning, it is one of the big questions of the day. What is the funding model? What is the best way to ensure that we do not lose all institutions such as SAHTAC? We do not lose all NGOs. We do not lose all civil society networks that we have today, because most of them are already shutting down. Some have already shut down. Some will face shutdown. As we do that, we need to reflect on a funding model that is going to help us and that is going to allow us to have these institutions continue to exist and play a very pivotal role. We would want to see a way out of this situation. Otherwise, if we do not come up with a solution fast, by 2036, most of the civil society partners we see today, most of the NGOs we see today will be functionally dead. Last but not least, I want to talk about the importance of Parliament as an institution. As a former civil society leader, I look back and reflect in the 15 or so years I spent in the civil society, I look back at the role that as a civil society leader I played in engaging the parliamentarians. There were some instances where I found myself engaging the parliamentarians, I think including in 2016 at Durban at the South African National AIDS Conference. We tried to engage the Portfolio Committee on Health, and we tried to bring back the HIV and AIDS agenda to the stage. We were in one or two instances able to convince some of the parliamentarians. But I also look at the level of Africa. We also tried in another initiative of health, especially around domestic financing for health, tried to engage the Pan-African Parliament. We tried to engage the institution there to see how the parliamentarians could play. But I joined Parliament of Zimbabwe in 2018, and I've been a member of the Portfolio Committee for Health in the Parliament of Zimbabwe since 2019, and I also have been in some stage been appointed as the chairperson for the Portfolio Committee for Health in Zimbabwe. And to that extent, I have seen how it is possible for civil society, how it is possible for institutions as SAHTAC to harness the potential of parliamentarians as a very important partner, as a strategic ally in promoting the agendas that civil society and networks such as SAHTAC seeks to promote. And it's an area that we need to continue to invest more. My honest assessment of my time as a civil society leader is that if I had known how possible it was to work more with parliamentarians, I would have invested more, because in most instances, we could have worked better with the parliamentarians. So today, as I speak to you, I want to encourage the civil society partners to engage not just the parliament in South Africa, but other parliaments outside South Africa, like the one in Zimbabwe. Parliamentarians play a role in promotion of the agendas that we do. In the debate around domestic financing for health, they are there, they need to be part of it. Mr. Mdluli, I actually chair, since July 2023, I co-chair the Pan-African Parliamentary Task Force on Domestic Financing for Health, where we're saying we need to honor the commitments that we've made as Africans towards funding health. Since 2001, we signed the Abuja Declaration. But in the last 25 years of the existence of that declaration, most of the African leaders, most of the African governments have failed to honor the basic 15% budget allocation towards healthcare, which could make a big difference, especially now that America and other countries have started to cut on funding. So that's one area of interest. As we celebrate SAHTAC's 10 years, we need also to appreciate the role of parliamentarians in fighting together as an ally, in promoting financing for health, in promoting policy changes, legislative changes that improve the lives of our people, that improves our healthcare systems. Because of time, Mr. Mdluli, I'll stop here for now, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Honorable Molokele, we greatly appreciate the insight. It's always nice listening to you. And thank you very much for educating us on these three aspects: the role of civil society, the importance of civil society, and how the civil society can form partnership with the government. I cannot really go deeper, but really, I think one of the things that was very interesting is point number 2, where you were touching on the role of civil society and how civil society is dependent on external funders to sustain their sustainability. While at the same time, the very same funders and civil society, they might have conflicting interests. Thank you very much, Honorable Molokele. It was also very interesting to learn about your role as an advocate, your role as a human rights lawyer, but also your recent role as the Member of Parliament of Zimbabwe, and how all of this can come together and how the civil society can actually fit into all of this. Thank you very much, sir. Greatly appreciate your time. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further waste of time, please allow me to introduce to you our second speaker. But before I introduce to you our second speaker, I must say that in our introduction, we have highlighted the role of PATH really as the initial secretariat for SAHTAC, and we are so grateful to colleagues such as Yolanda and Sbu to really help us move this agenda forward. But Comrade Molukele said something very important when he said some people will come and stay while others will go. And I must say that recently we've got our second speaker, Ms. Susan Lim, who has recently joined PATH as a senior analyst. She's also a public health advisor, where she provides advice on African health research and development, medicinal countermeasures, manufacturing and regulatory harmonization, amongst other things. Susan, she's a qualified pharmacist with a Bachelor of Pharmacy from Rhodes University and extensive experience in healthcare industry. She has previously fulfilled several managerial roles, including the role of being an executive manager for medicines risk and electronic benefit management, as well as the senior manager for health policy and development. And really her interest has been focusing on development of strategies that enable access for pharmaceutical and medicinal technology. She's a passionate advocate for sustainable solutions in promoting access to innovation and medicine in South Africa. On that words, I would like to welcome you, Susan.
Thank you, John. And good morning, colleagues, partners, and friends. It's a real privilege for PATH to be part of this moment and to reflect on the tenure of SAHTAC, a decade of advocacy, partnerships, and collective leadership in strengthening South Africa and region's health technology ecosystem. When SAHTAC was launched in 2016, PATH joined with civil societies, research institutions, industry, and government partners around a shared concern. South Africa had strong scientific capability and innovation potential. Yet too many of our promising health technologies were struggling to move from research into real-world impact. Policy fragmentations, regulatory delays, and misalignment in community needs was holding the system back. SAHTAC was created to address this gap, not by advocating for a single product or disease area, but by strengthening the overall environment for health research, development, and innovation. From the start, its value lays in convening diverse voices, scientists, advocates, policymakers, regulators, and private sector, to shape a common agenda focused on access, relevance, and impact. Over the past 10 years, SAHTAC has helped to shift the conversation. It has consistently positioned health R&D as both a health and socio-economic priority, one that's linked to industrial development, job creation, and national resilience. It has advocated for more efficient regulatory pathways, stronger alignment between innovation and primary healthcare needs, and the importance of engaging communities as an active partner in health research. Equally important has been SAHTAC's evolution. PATH is especially proud of SAHTAC's transition to local stewardship. The move of Secretariat to RM Institute marks a significant milestone, reflecting the maturity, sustainability, and local ownership. It reinforces the principle that Africa health innovation must be led from within, grounded in local priorities, and also accountable to community it serves. As we mark SAHTAC at 10, the landscape continues to evolve. We are seeing rapid advances in diagnostics, AI, digital health, and data-driven technologies, alongside persistent inequality in access and growing pressures on the regulatory system. In this context, SAHTAC's role as a trusted advocacy platform, one that bridges evidence, policy, and lived experiences, is more important than ever. This anniversary is therefore not just a celebration of past achievement. It really is a moment to reaffirm SAHTAC's relevance and renew our collective commitment to ensure that innovation translates to equitable access and measurable health impact. From PATH's perspective, SAHTAC at 10 represents continuity and recommitment to collaboration over silos, to access over exclusivity, and to impact over the rhetoric. We remain proud to be supporting SAHTAC at its inception, and we remain committed to its future as a partner. A great congratulations to SAHTAC and its members, past and present, and to the leadership that carries this work forward. PATH stands with you today and into the next decade. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. That was great, straight to the point, but we would like to appreciate your acknowledgement of the role of SAHTAC over the past 10 years. And you're quite correct to say health technology is really evolving. And currently we are living in times of AIs and so forth. And thank you very much for also reminding us about our role as the health technology continues to evolve. But most importantly, in your conclusion remark, we would like, we appreciate the commitment. That PATH will always be part of SAHTAC. We greatly appreciate that, and we would like to thank you very much for that insight. Ladies and gentlemen, just to build up on what Susan has said, I would like to introduce to you our next speaker, which is Sakile Haweka, who is the project manager and for SAHTAC under the Oram Institute. And something very interesting about Saki is that when the whole thing started, Saki was actually employed by PATH. So Saki has worked with PATH, but as we have been saying that in 2020, the Orams Institute took over the secretariat, and in that transition, Saki was also part of moving from PATH into the Oram Institute. And she has been with the Oram Institute since then, and she is going to take us through the reflection of SAHTAC journey over the next over the past 10 years, really highlighting key policy partnership and advocacy milestone. And her talk will also be accompanied by the video that a milestone video that we have developed, really reflecting what SAHTAC has been, what has been happening in the background since the last 10 years. So Saki, I think we will start with the video. I see Boaho is sharing the video. And then after the video, please feel free to jump in. Thank you.
you so much, John. And I'm going to share my screen because I have a presentation, some slides that I would like to share with everyone. Let me just quickly check which slides are here. Please do let me, John, if you can see my slides.
Not yet, Saki.
But anyway, I'm just so excited to be part of this journey, and I'm excited to share some of the highlights of SAHTAC. Let me see, there's the screen. I'm not sure what's happening here. Okay, they wants me to share from here. Okay, there we go. Great. Yes, as I was saying, I am excited to be here. I think my role.
Sorry, Saki, please put it in the presentation mode.
Yes, I'll do so. I was just saying that I am. I'm not sure how to say this, but I had to go through all the work that we've been doing since 2016. And I was amazed. Actually, I was just so proud of how far we've come. And I think the task that I had to do, putting together some of the key highlights and achievements, was how to collate all the key things. There was so much, and I just want to say that there are things that I have had to leave out because I just thought this is quite a lot for us to be able to present in one sitting. But I am really excited for how far SAHTAC has come, and I am excited that we're still pushing the agenda of increasing commitments for health R&D funding, and also funding for research and capacity building for institutions, and also for scientists and researchers. We're still pushing for increased uptake of health innovations and any other innovations that are in development or are already existing. So I'll just go through briefly a number of slides here, not many, but I'll try to be as fast as possible to redeem the time, just to highlight some of the key things that we have contributed into as SAHTAC policy tracking, and some of the changes in global and regional decisions and frameworks that we have contributed to through the different platforms and initiatives, advocacy initiatives we have taken. So from inception, I'll just move to the. Okay, so from inception, we can state that SAHTAC was tracking quite a number of policies, but one of the most important policy or act that was that gave birth to SAPRA. SAHTAC was actively involved in the comments and, just tracking and following up that all the key things around regulatory harmonization, products approval, and all that. And indeed, we saw in 2018, February, that the MCC gave way to SAPRA. And we are proud to say we contributed to this process one way or the other. We have evidence. And thereafter, SAPRA has been such a strong partner with us. We have had many webinars, we've had many engagements with them, and we remain SAPRA remains a critical partner for us. So as we continue with our advocacy journey, we ensure that we continue to engage with SAPRA. One other important milestone is that in 2024, the NHI was passed into law. And we are proud to say that we were part of this process. I think through some of our sub-grants like Campaign for Cancer, they laid a sub-grant where they were involved in stakeholder engagements, where comments and contributions from SAHTAC were put together. And we're happy to say part of what is in the NHI are contributions that SAHTAC gave through the different public hearings and the different engagements that we had. And even when we had the NHI launched in 2024, we ensured that we followed up on this because obviously there are other issues that are still, needing more attention and more advocacy. So we had a webinar there just to follow up, and we continue monitoring this. But this is one of the other big milestones for South Africa that SAHTAC was a part of. I think one of the critical things that we were also involved in as SAHTAC was during the COVID outbreak in 2020, when nobody knew what was happening, where everyone was, terrified. We provided the first platforms for conversations around understanding what this pandemic was all about and what was happening at that time. And we set up webinars, and we set up follow-up conversations at different stages where we try to unpack and just understand what was happening. Even when the issue of vaccines came up, we realized that there was also issues of non-access for African countries. So all those conversations we were part of, and we ensured that we put up our recommendations just to shape up some of the frameworks and some of the policies that not only regionally but globally have led to what we call the COVID-19 and also the pandemic preparedness that HWO has recently launched. So we are proud to say we've been part of this process. We have been part of these conversations, recommendations that came out from some of these platforms that we convened came and built some of these policies that have been now formed globally. So we are excited that we were part of this, and we contributed significantly as a coalition. And also, we continued to track health R&D funding through different platforms and just assessing and looking at what was happening. And we are proud to say that, some of these conversations that we have been having, we are not just inviting anybody, but we're actually inviting decision makers who have contributed and brought recommendations in these meetings and convenings that they've continued to implement and bring tangible policies and changes. So, one of the things we're doing is we're tracking the GFUNDA report, just trying to see whether funding was going up or down. But our baseline was the GFUNDA report of 2019. With the COVID pandemic, we saw a rise in a number of funding towards vaccines, towards health, towards so many things. But still, the tracking of R&D funding continues, and we see that with some of the funding that is highlighted here and the challenges of funding cuts, we do still need to continue with the advocacy for health R&D funding. Local, domestic funding is still a big thing for us. So, but we're excited that we've been part of these conversations, tracking and looking, and also ensuring that our call to action and our key conversations, they call for more local funding. Some of the other highlights that I want to mention, and this is critical because most of it coming up from COVID, we've had to now speak more about local and regional manufacturing, seeing as COVID-19 showed us that much of the vaccines were being, withheld by the global north. And this now brought us to a place where we needed to talk about producing our own vaccines as Africa. So these conversations were not only just local conversations of maybe manufacturing in South Africa, but local and regional manufacturing became the buzzwords. And we were part of these conversations. As you can see, some of the events and some of the key conferences that we participated in just to speak to these issues of local and regional manufacturing. And we are happy to say that most of the recommendations that came out from these key speakers have been cited or are part of these big frameworks that have been established in the region and in the African continent. So all these conversations, they started as webinars and coming out and then being included in some of these frameworks. And we are proud to have been part of that. And that is just some of the regional conferences that we continued, talking about local and regional production with different partnerships, as you can see there, AMREF, CREED, partnerships from East Africa and also West Africa. One of the most important, I know that this one is still pending, but we are happy that working with PATH, we were pushing for the signing and approval of the AMA Treaty, and it was done by South African Parliament in 2023-22. So we might have not yet ratified it as a country yet, but many of our advocacy, much of our advocacy led to this, and we are excited that it's still an ongoing process, but we were part of that process and advocacy. And some of the uptake of health innovations that have been in the pipeline, your Dapivirine, your lenacapavir, these are discussions that we've been part of, and we have brought call to actions. We have brought government into the table to discuss, to look at how to ensure equitable access for all these products that are actually, in the pipeline, and some of them are already in the market, but just these conversations that we've been part of have enabled us to actually engage with government to ensure that there is equitable access. So we've also, most recently, as I'm about to conclude, one of the things that we have actively engaged in the previous year, 2025, is our leadership in the C20 Science and Research Innovation Working Group. We were part of this discussion and part of this engagement where we led the Science and Innovation Working Group. We produced a policy brief, which was submitted, of recommendations around health R&D, which was submitted to G20 leaders. We also did a sign-on letter. I think this was a big milestone for us, and we all even hosted a side event during the G20 Social Summit. This also placed SAHTAC on a leadership pedestal to say we are the voice for health R&D in South Africa. And obviously, we've had many engagements in terms of strengthening the coalition and partnerships. So we are excited that we are still, a vibrant coalition that continues with advocacy. So these are some of our members. If your logo is not there, it's not because we're excluding you, but just to acknowledge all of you for the great work and the support that you have done in the last 10 years. We really appreciate as a secretariat, and we are hoping that in the next 10 years, we'll even do greater and bigger things. I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Saki, for reminding us of where we are coming from. I'm just mindful of time, and I see some of the colleagues who have joined in earlier because of other commitments, they have requested to be excused. So we will then move to our next line item, Saki, which really looks at voices from the ecosystem, where we are going to have reflections and insight, really looking at what are the reflections from our founding members. I did indicate earlier that we acknowledge the people who have been really driving this ship over the years. And on that note, please allow me to call upon Yolanda to quickly give us her personal reflection, considering that she was actually with Path when SAHTAC was formed, and she was the person who was really driving this. So over to you, Sis Yolanda.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to reflect on SAHTAC's journey. SAHTAC's journey starts from a long time ago when it was still a concept and a proposal to the Gates Foundation. And I had the privilege of working with colleagues at Path to put together this concept that eventually became funded by the Gates Foundation. And in this journey, we were able to pull together colleagues who were passionate about research, development, and innovation. And we came together. We formed what was, initially a coalition of international organizations, as John alluded to earlier. And eventually, with time, we transitioned the coalition to the Oram Institute, a local organization. But I must say that this was really an effort of many, many colleagues, and wanting to also acknowledge other founding members like IPM and AVAC and IAVI, who were there from the beginning. I think Prince, who's now at the Gates Foundation, was one of the founding members, although he was representing IAVI at the time. So wanting to really acknowledge others as well, and that it wasn't just Path, but a collection of others as well who were passionate and interested about this agenda. So it is really a real privilege to be part of this moment. And my reflections are, fivefold. Firstly, when I think about SAHTAC's influence over the past decade, it really stands out to me how SAHTAC has helped to shift the research, development, and innovation agenda, largely from just a technical conversation to a deeply people-centered conversation. SAHTAC has constantly reminded us that innovation only matters if it leads to timely, equitable access, particularly for those communities that are most affected. So I was reminded early on when I attended SAHTAC's convening, although I'm no longer part of SAHTAC really, I'm not working closely with TAC anymore, I am still very much interested in the work of SAHTAC. So I do join the events from time to time when I can. And every time I attend a convening, I'm really struck by, just the quality, not just of the science that is being discussed, but the deliberate conversation about what will it take to take this science and this evidence into policy and access. And that dialogue and these types of dialogues don't really happen by accident. It is because we have a coalition like SAHTAC that creates spaces for such conversations. So I really think that, SAHTAC and the membership has done an amazing amount of work to create these dialogues and to bring these policymakers that, 10 years ago, they would not even listen to what we had to say. But now when SAHTAC calls, they answer. So I think really it is a testament to your work and the effort that has been put in by everyone involved. Secondly, I want to talk about the contribution that SAHTAC has had in terms of bringing African voices to the table. So we were mindful that at the beginning it was international NGOs, and we wanted to have a local voice, and we wanted to have, local African voices at the table, not just in the discussions, but also in the leadership of how SAHTAC operates. So we are really proud to see that SAHTAC has helped to ensure that locally generated evidence and advocacy inform national, regional, and even global agendas. So this has reinforced a critical shift from Africa as a passive recipient of innovation to Africa as a driver of solutions and policy influence. And thirdly, I want to acknowledge SAHTAC as an important coalition that bridges the gap between research, policy and implementation by the way that you translate complex science into very simple language that civil society can understand. You have really helped to shorten the distance between innovation and real-world access. We've seen the examples that Saki has just presented, where we are seeing that bridge and that bridging function, which sometimes when we discuss in the scientific world, it seems invisible, but SAHTAC has really brought that role to light. So we can see that there's an important function in terms of convening and bringing these two worlds together. I also want to acknowledge SAHTAC, who have demonstrated the power of collaborative advocacy. I think Susan also mentioned this. And I think, you know, when we started this coalition, we were all working in our individual silos within our organizations, and at times we were competing with each other. And I think forming this coalition has been important in that we realized that, you know, if we came together, worked together for a common goal, we are more likely to achieve long, sustainable results. So really the collaborative advocacy is the strength that SAHTAC brings. And this is so important, especially in this current landscape where funding you know, is drying out, and really we're working in a very complex ecosystem. And finally, as SAHTAC enters a second decade, its impact is evident in the foundations it has laid for future-facing, resilient health R&D ecosystems that are locally anchored and regionally aligned, whilst they are still globally connected. So we celebrate SAHTAC's 10 years. We are not just marking this milestone, we are recognizing that a coalition that has really helped reshape how we think about health innovation and how we work with governments and how we govern and lead this work from Africa. This is really something that is truly, truly worth celebrating. Congratulations, SAHTAC, and happy 10-year anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sis Yolanda, really for those reflection words. Greatly appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are really pressed for time. I'm not gonna reflect. We were supposed to have Mr. Sbosiso Tlhajwako, but unfortunately we don't seem, it seems like he did not join. So on that note, please allow us to move to our next line agenda, which is really looking at the SAHTAC next decade. This will be a panel discussion that will be led by two of our coalition members, which is Ruth Dube as well as Nitha Muera. So we will hand over to both of you colleagues to really lead us in a panel discussion. Over.
Hi, good afternoon and good morning, and wherever you're joining, thank you very much. And again, congratulations to SAHTAC. But more importantly, we congratulate the community members who have contributed to the goals of SAHTAC. My name is Nitha, as introduced by John, and we, together with Ruth, would really like to take this few minutes an opportunity to hear from you. Where to now? We've heard about our achievements, but in your opinion and your view, what are the key areas that we as SAHTAC should focus on in the next short, medium, and long-term goals? And with that, I'm also going to get Ruth to also share a few words so that we can have an open discussion. Thank you. Over to you, Ruth.
Thank you, Nitha. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a great milestone, and as we had all the introductions, all the sharings, the impact and everything, this is a point where we say if we have done so much, we're excited about the next decade. What is it that we could do based on the challenges that we had before, and now being wiser with what we have and still having mountains of those challenges that we are facing ahead, funding, all those things, and we're still ambitious in everything that we want. What is it that we can really do to make it better? What is it that we can carry forward with the lessons that we have? What is it that we can actually do? This will be quite interesting to get some nuggets from different people, different platforms, different experiences to add value to the next decade.
So we're encouraging people to raise their hands. Please don't be shy. We really want a participatory method to this approach. And if you are shy, we give you the opportunity to also send an email. But there's about 24 of us left on the call. If you can raise your hands, any idea, the sky's our limit. But we also want to be realistic, because this is not SAHTAC show. This is a community show, and this is SAHTAC belongs to the community, and so we really want to hear your thoughts and views about what is our priorities. We've heard about access, we've heard about challenges, we've heard about our footprint in Africa, but what should we do in 2026, 2027, 2028, and then the next 7 years thereafter? Thank you.
I see Sibongile has got her hand up, Nita.
Okay, please go ahead. Sorry, I cannot see hands. So thanks,
Yeah.
John, for facilitating that.
Okay.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you very much, John, Zakile, and everyone who has made this webinar a success. This is really, exciting to look back and see where SAHTAC is coming from and the role I think everyone has played in making sure that we are calling for equal access. We are calling for new research and development. Just forgive me for the surname of the honorable member of Zimbabwe. When he was talking about engaging parliamentarians, he caught my attention. Can I just ask is there an advice on how we can engage parliamentarians? Because at some point as civil society, we want to maintain our independence and non-partisan strategy. So engaging with parliamentarians sometimes might be confused with aligning ourselves with some political parties. But I think that is a good opportunity to push our advocacy. But what kind of advice he can give us, or which channel that we can use in terms of making sure that we are able to speak to parliamentarians, portfolio committees, and all those people. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Sibongile. That is a great question, and I hope. I'm not sure if Mr. Daniel is still around. However, I think since John has mentioned and raised the point that our time is limited, we would rather collect all the questions and be able to give the responses later, so that at least we can pull as much as we can in terms of the inputs, in terms of the questions. But that is a great questions. The how can we engage with the parliamentaries? Thank you very much. I'm not sure if John, you can see any hands from your side.
Nothing at this moment, but what I've also realized is that we do have colleagues who have joined us who can really contribute significantly to the discussion. And I can see Blossom, if you can hear us, we will greatly appreciate your opinion in the discussion. And the questions are very simple and straightforward. How can we sustain SAHTAC in the next 10 years? And it's not only open to Blossom, it's open to everybody who's being on the call. Over.
Thank you very much, John. Is Blossom available? Okay.
Yeah, I don't see any
Don't
additional hands. Lindelwa, if you can hear me, your input will also be greatly appreciated in terms of the things that we can do to sustain this baby for the next 10 years.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Blossom, thank you very much.
I was struggling to unmute myself.
Yeah.
John, SAHTAC, I was very happy to see all the progress that has been made. So what my contribution would be, we should focus, not that you haven't been doing it, but more community-focused research, getting communities involved, communities to lead the process, just to get that ownership so that to increase that voice of advocacy. I think that will be very key, and to center communities and SAHTAC to keep communities along the journey, not as passive participants, but active as active partners in the process, because without community, we can't do the work. I know there's SAHTAC partners, but I think maybe we can just strengthen that. That's my opinion. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Blossom. Do you want to comment, Sis Ruth and Nita?
Definitely for me, I would actually say maybe for the sake of those who joined later, as you mentioned, mainly SAHTAC gave the groundbreaking opportunities, how SAHTAC started, the early conversations that have actually matured into not just local conversation or regional conversations, but that have been embraced by international platforms to be able to be able to strengthen health systems. That is as far as some of the examples like the vaccine manufacturing that has also been local. The same networks and collaborations that have grown even bigger. We can even see the transition from PATH to ORAM and all that for us to be able to see the growth, the sustainability that has been shown, the maturity and the trust of those who are supporting SAHTAC, and also a couple of pending issues that have been raised before and just been mentioned to say, if only we could do even more to be able to conclude this matter, then we will be able, some issues relating to vaccines, some issues concerning funding and models to be able to do it, especially from domestic fundings and all that. And also maybe this is where we are trying to raise a call to action to say, what is it that we can do? But we cannot raise that call to action without knowing what the partners and everybody here is involved to say, what is it that we'd like to see in the next 10 years? So it's an open opportunity for us to add value and open opportunity to contribute and also be part of that conversation in the next decade when we do the next celebration and say, in our second celebration, this is what we do. This is the beginning of the contributions that we can actually pull in and gather information. So I'm not sure if there is anybody that you can see or any question on the chat, John.
Yet, Ruth, but I would like to call upon colleagues. I'm not sure if Lauren will be able to hear us. And Lauren, it might also be great to get your input into this, if you can be able to speak, or maybe share your reflections, because I know you are one of those long standing members. So if you can hear me, we would like to invite you into the discussions.
Thanks, John. And thank you for a great program today. And as many have said, this is an amazing point that we can see all the work that we've achieved, and reflecting on that just reminds you how much we have done. For me, I think, we've spoken about financial, financial and financing of that, but I think that it's also speaks to innovation. And while we have to look at the financing of organizations like this, we also have to look at financing of healthcare as a whole, and that just because you live in a certain area and in a certain region, you don't get access to the latest innovations, or even innovations that are 10 years old. That's something that we should be looking at. And we should also be holding people accountable that their innovations are in fact cost effective and are adding value and cost benefit to the population and to society, and not just a extension of what I call egotistical research, when it's nice to have and you have all these great findings and no one has access to it. So for me, I think, that's something that if we're truly wanting to look at health technology, the access to that innovation is something that we need to make sure that people in the region that we serve have access to that. So that would be my focus.
Hi, John, and thank you, Lauren, for that. So, I agree with all the suggestions, and the commitment that Ruth and I have made is that it's our role and responsibility post the seminar is to ensure that we follow up with our partners on what our goals are. Again, to hear what are the things that we can focus on. There's an array of health issues, including climate change, including areas of mental health, and moving away from infectious diseases, but also to non-infectious diseases, which is manageable, treatable, and can be addressed. So Ruth and I are making a commitment to take this matter forward. And we're going to work with Sakile and John and the team to possibly do a short survey so that we can then work with our partners in the next year at minimum to begin to address things, because Ruth and I and the SAHTAC colleagues, we're moving away from hosting seminars and webinars and talk shows, because that's all romantic, but to really begin to say, okay, what next? And what are the people saying that their needs are? So with that, I'm going to say congratulations again to the group, and thank you very much for the input. I'm also catching a flight, so I will be excusing myself in the next minute or two. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Nitha. And thank you very much, Ruth. I think the comments were great. And because of the time, I'm looking at the time, we want to really be respectful of people's time. 1 hour, 30 minutes was allocated for this session. And on that note, this session, the link, this session is being recorded and the link will be made available, because we really want to do some follow-ups on the discussion. And then I think we've got 1 or 2 line items that still remain in the 5 minutes that is left. But on that note, I would like you to please allow me to hand over back to Sakile to really take us through the SAHTAC next decade. Okay. To Sakile really to unveil the SAHTAC at 10 brand and roadmap, including commitment. And Sisaki, because of the time, if possible, I will also request you to kind of take us through the key takeaways. And then after your talk, we can adjourn the session. Over to you, Sis.
Thanks. I won't take very long. This is just to inform you that we are not, this was a suggestion from the team or the coalition. that we wouldn't want to just do a once-off event to say, oh, we're celebrating 10 years and reflecting here and there. But this will be a year-long engagement, which will be streamlined with our work plan and some of the work that is already existing. So we don't also want to separate this. So basically, as you can see there, we have our brand, our logo. This is just to give the identity of the campaign. So if you see SAHTAC at 10 or 10 SAHTAC, that's basically us this year saying it's a decade of SAHTAC celebrating advocacy, coordination, and impact. So basically that is what I'm here to share. But quickly, I'll also just give you a small highlight of what we are planning to do. So we have about 3-4 pillars that will guide our work this year. We will have a documentation, interview, storytelling activities where we will publish a 10-year impact booklet and video. So we'll be approaching some of our coalition members who've been around for a long time to share their stories, to share some of the work that we have done. So we'll have this published by end of the year, and that's our main focus this year. And then our branding and visibility, we will develop a social media campaign to spotlight SAHTAC impact over the past decade. So you'll be seeing more of our content on social media as we try to highlight and bring back conversations that we have had before and some of the impact and the work that we have done. So basically we'll just be more visible, but it's more about elevating our impact and ensuring that people are aware of what we have done. And then we'll just have 3 major events or engagements, I would put it that way. So we have had our first event, which is today, the launch of this celebration. And secondly, we will have 3 flagship dialogues or webinars. We'll be pulling out some of the key themes of things that we have contributed to and spoke up and discussed and had conversations about in the last couple of years. But we are going to streamline them with what we're already doing so that it's not out of the way, but we'll be told more about this. And this will also be streamlined with our quarterly meetings so that there's that smoothness. So March, July, September are the dates we are targeting. And then hopefully we'll have a face-to-face AGM in April. Again, that will be another opportunity for us to, strengthen our messaging and sharing our impact. And yeah, so lastly, we will produce a legacy report end of the year, a video, and obviously we'll be on social media more. So I think I'll pause there and end there. If there is any question or anything, I will allow you to ask. But the team, the working group that is working on this, we want to say thank you so much. John Sakile, Nitha, Calvin, Ruth Pinambi, and Miguel and Boaho, who are supporting us on comms. So this is the team that has volunteered to run with this project throughout the year, and we really appreciate. We are happy to get inputs from you, suggestions on how we can do things better, any collaboration that you want, and we are happy to take that up. So on that note, colleagues, I think that's the main way forward for us, is that we will share more of this concept note of what we will do next, and we will love to hear your contributions, but we are happy to share the outline of what we will be doing in the coming year. On that note, I also want to thank John and thank the whole team and the panelists and our guest speaker. I am grateful and thank you for everything, and our team, the technical team, the comms team. Thank you, colleagues. Thanks, John. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I can't say much more, Sisaki. We are 1 minute over our time. This brings us to the end of our webinar. we will be in touch. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. This brings us to the end of our webinar. Thanks.